Try it again. Anyway, just looking to see whether the audio is going to hold or not. It kind of looks like it might, so I'm going for another one. I thought I would take a little bit more of a relaxed approach here, not be so scripted. I know scripting is nice and everything, but if you stumble over your words, which is something I'm very common to do, then it's time to maybe rethink your strategy a little bit and pull back and try to be myself on one of these here video kind of deals. Ultimately, it comes down to the question, if you're watching all the news reports and everything, and there are a multitude and multitude and multitude of different news and different spin angles from this angle to that angle and every other angle, as to, how it is that we seem to wake up every morning without the mushrooms in the sky. There's so many triggering points, that's what I'm calling them, triggering points that are developing across the world that I just, it's hard to take a fathom of, just where it's going to come from. Um, you have like, the Northern European theater, where NATO's pushing up against Russia's nose or the bear's nose and poking it there. It's like, thousands of more troops and, all the armored personnel carriers, tanks, all that kind of crap going in up there. Not to mention, reinforcing missile batteries and so forth, anti-ballistic missile batteries or whatever, and all the way down, moving down towards, how you say, the Black Sea area. So, basically NATO is shoring up its defenses all the way around. So it depends on what cities and so on and so forth. But, all of this is out there. People are still screaming over Crimea. Oh, they annexed Crimea. Well, no, they didn't annex Crimea. Crimea had an old arrangement that went all the way back to freaking Khrushchev. Khrushchev kind of like, okay, all right, well, I'll kind of give, Crimea over to Ukraine, but, the deal is that, we still got to maintain our Black Sea fleet. And, so that's Crimea's job. And so basically what happened was that, in the Nazi uprising back a couple of years ago, the neo-Nazi idiots, they just decided to go crazy. And, anybody who had any sanity got the hell out of there. And, that's kind of what happened. It's like, and then, Crimeans, they just took a look at what was going on up north and said, we don't want any part of that. And if you notice, the Russians, as they went into Crimea, they didn't annex anything. Nobody took a shot at each other. The soldiers that were there, it was all like a family affair. I mean, basically Ukraine, Crimea, all of that, they're all relatives going across the board, when it comes to Russia. So, that's why, Putin said that, he didn't want a civil war on his hands when he was referring to Ukraine, because he's talking about family. It's the same thing that what happened in the American Civil War. Family. Family split up. You had, some family members going north, some family members going south, so believing in this, believing in that. And it's all, where your head's at and what your beliefs are. And that's kind of really where it is. It's like, and that's what's going on with the world today. It's where your philosophies and your beliefs and all of this is going. The whole business out with Korea. I mean, I hate to say this, but it's like, China does have a part to play here. It's like, why? Well, because, China's little freaking illegitimate bastard stepchild, North Korea, Kim, is just a nasty little bastard. And, he ain't behaving, and that's the way it is. It's like, and the new guy that's coming in with, China, all that stuff, he doesn't particularly like, this Kim. So the whole thing is like, okay, so they grab the coal. They don't get coal money, all that stuff as far as shipments go. and it pisses them off. And so the whole thing is that, okay, so, you know, they got this little family feud going on. And it is a family feud, so, and not to mention, troops at the border, whatever, they just don't want all the spillage, of refugees and everything, like, Turkey has with Syria, for example, I mean, whatever the hell. I mean, the whole Middle East, there's triggering points all the way across there. Not to mention the Kuiper Pass is still a daily affair between, how you say, Pakistan and India, and every day, every fucking noontime, they go out there and shoot cannons at each other, and they don't aim at anybody particular or anything. Yeah, okay, we'll fire and you'll fire and everybody's happy, but no, angst and everything else is still moving on. It's like, so everything's ramping up and ramping up and ramping up. We're sending, our armadas and their ships, Japanese ships and South Korean ships are joining our ships. And, and of course, Kim has to make a big show on the freaking seashore, and then, shoot rockets at some mountainside and all that stuff as if that's going to be, making some kind of like ultimate stay. Oh, but we have to fire an intercontinental ballistic missile just because Kim shot all off. We got to do that instead. So anyway, this may sound a little like, confusing and somewhat of a rant, but, the deal is that, there are a lot of hot spots, and at some point, somebody's going to aim some gun in the wrong direction and pull the trigger. And when that happens, it's going to just start the ball rolling. And it doesn't matter whether it's in the east or the west. It will propagate from the east and go to the west, or from the west and go to the east. You will quickly find that, there'll be a pairing off of nations, a pairing off of people, of clans, of generals, and so on like this, whereby the positions will harden against each other. And, that's when the real crap hits. When the positions really harden against each other after they pair off. And where the battle lines then lie. Right now, on a tactical measure, strategic measure, in the overall stratagem, you can kind of surmise where the battle lines are, but on tactical senses, when you get down to the very specifics, you're not quite sure yet, and that's the thing. It's like, we're not quite sure where they are yet. We have ideas, of course, but that's kind of where it is. So I don't know. There's like a couple of spots, two or three. You have the East China Sea. I mean, we're making friends and parlaying up with China, but then don't forget that China has very old relationships with Russia, and there's nothing wrong with Russia. If Russia's actually trying to clean up their act, finally. Finally, the old guard in Russia is slowly retiring off, slowly going off over the hills and the sunsets and stuff. And they're, they're going to be dying off. And all of these younger folks who maybe grew up at the tail end, were children in the tail end of the old USSR or Soviet Union, but don't really remember it. They might remember how you say, the disparity that was going on afterwards. A few years there, even the soldiers weren't even being paid, over there in Russia. So they had very hard times. And, Russia going over to their constitutional democracy is a very, very hard challenge for them. They have a lot of things that they need to pull together, and that's the thing. It's like, and they need to have a chance and time to pull things out of their ass to get that democracy going and to pull it together. And you know what? It's like, they recently did a clear way I did, a thing that, I mean, everybody passed, how you say, their financial inspection in the Parliament, the Duma there, which is great. It's like, so, that kind of mitigates the corruption. So corruption is not being seen, in the Duma as it might have been like 20, 30 years ago, so that's where that's at. It's like, so, we're just, really hanging there. And otherwise, you know, spokespeople over there, all of that, everybody's trying to just keep a level head, trying to maintain a sense of balance or sanity towards situations that could easily go out of control. And that's kind of where it is. And if you watch all of the different points of view, you could get pretty damn confused. But the thing you have to do to, unconfuse yourself with when it comes to really, like, where's the war and whatever, is basically the hardening up of positions, the hardening up of, the soul and the spirit of things, and the pairing off, of people, nations, individuals, creeds, and all of this against each other, all that stuff. I mean, Kurds have recently taken on some actions, even in Iran, so there's like, local events going on, regional events going on across, let's say, the Middle East, and all that. Syria is a mess. It's going to take like 3 generations to rebuild. I mean, they've just completely blown that one to hell. I mean, how those cities have been destroyed. Aleppo is a joke. It's just needs a bulldozer to just go over it and just level it out and start from scratch. I mean, but that's kind of what it is. It's like, we're looking at some real damage, and not to put things aside otherwise, in other areas of the world, such as like in Africa. I mean, there's like, uprisings and stuff like that, and the war's still going on, and, rancor going on in the Congo and so on. And these things can't be forgotten about. So at a time when we can and do have the technologies to, literally pull it together on our planet, we're doing just about the opposite. So rather than like pooling our resources and figuring out, well, okay, how do we get health care, and how do we, go about the business of satiating, hunger across the world, and these kind of things. We have the technology to completely take an assessment of all resources on the planet and allocate and reprioritize, how you say, the logistical aspects of meeting people's needs across the entire world, and that's kind of where, like, Jacques Fresco, the Venus Project, has been at for so many years, and I'm kind of like totally in agreement with that. It's just, we have the technologies, we have the means, we have the capabilities, to turn our world into, as he might phrase, a new Garden of Eden, and yet, what are we doing? We're out beating the drums of war and, wreaking havoc everywhere and just making a mess out of everything. So where are we? I mean, I keep wondering where the jobs are going to come in the United States and the major factories and all that stuff. And, it's like, and I'm kind of holding back in reservation on that. I don't know how we're going to pull that one off, and we're in such deficits. So. That's kind of where that is. But I thought I'd stop in for a minute and, make another one of these and see where it goes, and, just pick it up steam and roll from there. But hey, folks, you take care of yourselves, and, let all be well. Peace. All right.